using your lats. Instead, you want to position yourself right under the bar and once again stick your chest out by squeezing your shoulder blades really tight together. You want to do most of your We've all seen that guy in the gym bench pressing a ton of weight with hardly any range of motion, or the spotter that rips the weight off on every rep even when his help is completely not needed, or the guy doing bicep curls looking like he's trying to do the limbo. Even though you might have laughed at these guys and their terrible form, you may very well be making some serious mistakes yourself. Even if your mistakes aren't as extreme, a relatively minor deviation in your form can switch the focus of an exercise away from the muscles that you're trying to target, making that exercise far less effective. Over the years of spending countless hours in the gym, both as a full-time trainer and while working out myself, I've narrowed down this list to just 8 of the most common gym exercises that I see people getting plain wrong. And today I want to give you guys some minor tweaks to make all of these exercises far more effective so you can better target the muscles that you're trying to work, allowing you to build more muscle and see faster results. So let's start with the lower body for our first exercise, which is lunges. The biggest mistake that I see people of all different skill levels make with lunges is lunging with an almost overlapping stride position. What I mean is that people will lunge in a straight line, putting one foot directly in line with the other like they're trying to do some complicated sobriety test. This is wrong. You want to plant your feet a little less than hip width apart for every lunge. While lunges can help you develop better balance, the exercise itself should not be a balancing act. So there's no need to practically cross your feet over with each lunge. Another mistake is taking steps too close together. When you take a small step forward and lunge with your feet too close together, you're going to be making more of a triangle between your legs at the bottom of every lunge. Usually your knee will also wind up going past your toes or simply just going too far forward, which will put excess stress on that front knee. On the other hand, when you do it right, you're going to be making more of what looks like a rectangle shape in between your legs, and your front knee won't be going past your toes. The last thing about lunges that I want to mention is that you shouldn't let your knee smash into the floor on every rep. You can definitely come down to the floor and lightly touch the floor with your knee as long as you do it in a controlled way. Dropping to your knee, on the other hand, not only can it harm your knee, but it'll also take the tension off your legs at the bottom of every rep. Now, moving on to an upper body exercise, we have dips on the parallel bars. First of all, you shouldn't do dips on a bench. Since your hands are locked behind your back, the exercise puts your shoulders in a very unnatural position that can cause impingement. Luckily, with parallel bars, we can do dips without the hands being behind the back. But even with regular dips on parallel bars, there are still a lot of mistakes here to address. First of all, you shouldn't be doing partial reps like I see many people doing at the gym. If you can't do reps where you go all the way down until your upper arm is almost parallel with the ground, then work on improving your tricep strength with other exercises. If you have an assisted pull-up machine or resistance bands, you can use those to help yourself work through a full range of motion on dips as well. Not going low enough is a problem, but going too low is also a problem. You shouldn't go lower than parallel with the floor. Otherwise, you'll once again be placing a lot of stress on the shoulders. The other thing that people will do is flare their elbows out way too far. While you can flare your elbows out a little bit and lean forward to concentrate more on your chest, you don't want to flare them too far out. And the last thing that a lot of people do wrong is they try to do dips while keeping their body perfectly vertical. Even if you're trying to concentrate on your triceps, you'll be a lot better off leaning at least slightly forward with your chest in front of your hips on this exercise. Next up are dumbbell and barbell chest presses. The most common mistakes with these are either having your elbows flared too far out or having them too tight together. When your elbows are flared too far out, you're putting a lot of pressure on your shoulder and your rotator cuff. On the other hand, when your elbows are too close to your ribs, you're shifting most of the tension away from your chest and redirecting that tension towards your triceps and the front of your shoulder. Now keep in mind, a lot of this does depend on grip width as well. When you're purposefully trying to do a wider grip on the bench press, your elbows will naturally flare out a little wider. And the same thing in reverse. When you're doing close grip presses, your elbows will naturally be a little tighter to your body. However, ideally with something like a dumbbell press or a regular bench press, we want our elbows to be about 75 degrees away from our body, but no more. Another mistake is curving the lower back out too much. Before beginning the exercise, we do want to bring the shoulder blades back and tight together, and we also want to maintain the natural lumbar curve in our lower back. But we don't want to look like we're bridging while we're bench pressing, because this will increase the risk of injury to your neck and to your lower back. Another mistake is ending off with the weight above or below your shoulders. Even if you follow an arc-like path during a bench press, at the end of the movement, the bar or the dumbbells should always be in line with your shoulders, not below your shoulders or above your head. Let's move on to another chest exercise, cable flies. For some reason with cable flies, I see a lot of people bringing their arms and the cables way too far back. The problem here is that with flies, since your elbows are opened up at a very wide angle, there's already a lot of tension on your shoulders. When you go too far back, you're increasing your risk of hyperextending and injuring those shoulders. When lowering the weight, you want to aim to stop even with your chest, or maybe just a little bit further back before lifting that weight right back up. Another problem that mostly beginners run into is performing the fly with the elbows locked out. Not only does this put excessive pressure on the elbows, but it also decreases the amount of tension that's placed on the chest, which is the muscle that you're trying to target to begin with. You want to keep your elbows slightly bent and pretend that you're hugging a really wide tree. The last problem you might run into is if you're rounding your shoulders too far forward. With flies, just like with the chest presses, you want to make sure that you retract your shoulder blades and stick your chest out. Next up is the bent over barbell row. With this exercise, most people aren't sure where they should be aiming to bring the bar. You could bring the bar higher up towards your chest or lower towards your belly button. While neither of these are necessarily wrong, you should be choosing where to aim for a specific purpose. When you row towards your belly button, you'll target a lot more of the muscles in the middle of your back and some of your lats as well. On the other hand, when you do rows closer to your chest, you'll be targeting a lot more of your upper back. Of course, this does also depend on how far you bend forward as well. Now, the most serious mistake that I see for any standing bent over movement is forward rounding of the spine. Normally, you'll naturally maintain a neutral lumbar curve, but when you're bent over with heavy weight in your hands, that weight will be pulling your upper body down. And if you don't resist and stabilize the weight properly, you can easily wind up with a lower back injury. So to prevent this from happening, you'll want to stick your chest out and really squeeze your shoulder blades nice and tight together before you even lift the weight up. Thinking about maintaining a big chest and seeing your chest in the mirror the whole time will help you out quite a bit as well. If you still have trouble with your lower back rounding, then I also recommend sticking your butt out. It might feel weird before beginning the exercise, but once you have that weight in your hands and the weight is pulling your upper body down, you'll have that neutral lumbar curve that we're aiming for. For beginners, I found that keeping the head up reminds them to keep their chest up as well, because where the head goes, the body will follow. But you can also pack your chin tight by pulling your chin back into a position that makes it look as if you have a double chin while keeping your eyes a few feet in front of you. Now, the same advice applies whenever you're in a bent over position lifting anything off the ground, whether it's a big compound exercise like a deadlift, an isolation exercise like a bent over reverse fly, or you're simply lifting a heavy box up off the ground. The last thing you want to avoid with barbell rows is pulling with your hands instead of pulling with your elbows. When you pull with your hands, you're going to be targeting your biceps a lot more. On the other hand, if you focus on pulling that weight up with your elbows, you're going to be targeting the back much better. Another exercise I see problems with is with cable tricep extensions, whether you're using an EZ bar attachment or a rope. The first mistake is not locking your elbows in place. Your elbows should be tight to your ribs and they shouldn't be swinging back and forth as the weight goes up and down. Otherwise, you'll be incorporating your lats, making this tricep exercise a lot less effective. The other mistake is standing too straight up in what looks like a perfectly vertical line. Now, while you can get away with this with a rope, if you open up the rope at the bottom of every one of your extensions and go around your hips, with an EZ bar, you're not going to be able to come to full extension because your hips are going to be in the way. Instead, you should bend slightly forward to get a full range of motion and to better target your triceps. Next up is the lat pull down. The biggest mistake you see with this one is excessive swinging when bringing the bar down towards your chest. When you swing like this, not only can you wind up with a lower back injury, but you're also using momentum rather than using your lats. Instead, you want to position yourself right under the bar and once again stick your chest out by squeezing your shoulder blades really tight together. you want to do most of your reps without any assistance from momentum, and only use a little bit of momentum to help squeeze out those last couple of reps as your muscles start to fatigue. The other common mistake beginners make with lat pull downs is they'll pull the bar way too low. When you go too low, you're putting your shoulders in a bad position, and you're also limiting the effectiveness of the exercise, especially since you'll have to use a lot lighter of a weight to get down that far. Instead, you should be aiming to bring the bar either under your chin or to your upper chest and no lower. The last mistake with this exercise is pulling with your elbows too close together. In reality, when you're doing this exercise, you want to pretend that you're trying to bring your elbows behind your back for a more effective contraction and for better targeting of the lats. The last exercise that I want to go over today is skull crushers. With skull crushers, you want to make sure that you keep your elbows close together. Many people will flare their elbows out way too far with exercises like skull crushers and French curls as well. By doing that, you're once again taking the emphasis off the triceps. The other major mistake that I see is bringing the bar above your head on the way down. These are called skull crushers for a reason. Your target should be your forehead on